the process FMEA, the PFMEA, there's probably 24 different kinds of FMEAs that you could do, but in, product design and launching into manufacturing, there's really 3 of them that are talked about mostly. The application FMEA, which we know nothing about because it's all dependent upon how your users can interact with your product. And I suppose if we were marketing the product, we would know about that. But that one's not for us to do. That's more for our customer to do. Whoever's marketing the product, they're going to want to be doing the application FMEA. The 2 that we are typically focused on are the design FMEA, which is when you're doing the design, you're looking for failures of the design. Is that part strong enough? What happens if that bolt comes out? And you're asking questions like that and seeing what could happen, what are the effects of that, and is it serious enough that we need to do something about that? And we're also involved in the process FMEA, which is the manufacturing process. That's the one that in all of our products that we're launching, if there's an FMEA to be done, we're doing the PFMEA. The design FMEA is usually the design engineering team. On occasion, that's also us, or we're at least included in it because we're doing at least part of the design. But when it comes to the process FMEA, we're usually doing that by ourselves. And the whole purpose of doing any of these FMEAs is to try to predict failures. You look at what could go wrong. You assume that it does go wrong, and what's going to happen if it goes wrong. How serious is it going to be? And how likely is it to occur? And then you try to identify by this predictive method those failures and see how impactful they are, and then decide if you need to mitigate those issues before you even build the product, and that would kind of prevent their occurrence.
I want to go into this assuming no one's ever heard of a PFMEA. So PFMEA, process failure modes and effects analysis. What that's basically saying, the general FMEA is a failure mode. So what is the failure? What could go wrong? And then effects analysis. What is the effect of that thing going wrong? So what you have to do with a PFMEA, in order to conduct a PFMEA, you have to have a process. So you have to start by outlining what a manufacturing process for a product is going to be. So before you build the first unit, maybe alpha prototypes are done, beta prototypes are probably complete-ish. You're almost ready for production, but you're still doing a bit of work getting it ready, okay? But you have a general idea of what the manufacturing process is going to look like. First you do X, then you do Y. There's a step-by-step logical flow to the process of building that product. So you have now a process. Now you can do a PFMEA against that process. That's what you're evaluating. And you're looking at that process to try and find, or like John said, predict failure modes and what are the effects of those failure modes before you actually build in volume. It allows you to look at the process critically. You get a bunch of people, different stakeholders within the process together, and you look at the process and you look at the requirements for the output device and make sure that this process is going to output the product that you want or the product that your customer expects you to output. Mostly it's a conference room. You get a group of people together, you pull up, we actually have a template of a PFMEA on our website, I think. And you can sit down and you can pull up that defined process that I just spoke about, and you can start to go through it. And it starts right from the inception of the product. What's the first thing that happens? And you go right up into put the product in a box and ship it out the door. Now, one of the I'll call it inputs into a process FMEA is, say you've done a prototype run of 5 or 10 units in a very controlled environment, maybe built by engineers, but you've flexed the process a little bit out on the floor. Yeah, that's all input. So that's something that would be input to a PFMEA. Maybe you've done a pilot run, which is a more formal execution of a process. A PFMEA, you can have input from that in your PFMEA. The other thing to remember is a PFMEA is a living document. So you do this big initial analysis of the process before you go into manufacturing, but you can always revisit a PFMEA a year into manufacturing, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it may be. If parts change, one goes obsolete, one comes into fruition in the product to replace that obsolete component, you may want to revisit the PFMEA because there could be different failure modes associated to that new part. So the PFMEA is never a finished document. It's a thing that can constantly be updated and constantly be reviewed in attempts to predict and mitigate failures through your process.